What the prophets did not know was the quality of Gentile blessing, Christ in and among all his people, a glorious reality in expectation, not in any single nation, but in every member of his body taken out of all nations. The British Israelites claim that they have always been God's peculiar people, even though none of their ancestors were aware of the fact. But have they ever yet been provoked to jealousy by saved Gentiles? Romans 11:11. If not, they are still lost. The blood of Messiah is still on their heads, and they are in a state of profound insensibility as regards God and spiritual matters. These peoples in Britain and North America, looked upon by all Gentile nations as being the leaders of the Gentiles, how called they learned the secret of a God-fearing life. 1 Timothy 3:16. For that secret is, he who was manifested in flesh, declared righteous in spirit, seen by angels or messengers, herald among Gentiles. Now, if the British Israelites have always been and still are God's peculiar people, is it not strange that Paul here excludes them altogether? Was Christ then not herald among Israel? Certainly, but the proclamation was productive of almost no effect beyond further apostasy. We ought to glory ill the fact that we are Gentiles, once apart from Christ, alienated. We ought to glory all the fact that we are Gentiles, once apart from Christ, alienated from the national rights of Israel, strangers as regards the covenants of the promise, having no expectation or hope, without God in the world of mankind, Ephesians 2:12. Yet now in Christ Jesus, you the Gentiles are become near in the blood of Christ. If Paul's epistles are still in force and nothing has intervened to put them out of date, then he has neither room nor message for British Israelites. It was to Israel that God gave a spirit of stupor, Romans 11:8. Yet, alas, it seems to be that this spirit now lies also upon British Israel. This is proved by the fact that British Israelites are generally quite unable to enter into the depths of Pauline truth, and indeed, the Bible has become to them a book for making clippings out of. These clippings are pasted into another book, which then forms their Bible. Here is an example. Now, if you are Christ, consequently you are Abraham's seed, Galatians 3:29. That means of natural course you must be all Israelite. What else could you be if you are Abraham's seed? But it is the flawless divine Greek text which upsets this rather hasty assumption. It does not say you are the seed of Abraham, but of Abraham a seed, or one seed you are. Or as Dr. Robert Young has it, then of Abraham ye are seed. Gentile believers are spiritual seed of Abraham. The physical seed of Abraham are mentioned in Romans 9:6-8. For not all who are out of Israel, those are Israel, nor yet seeing that they are a seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac there will be called to thee a seed. This means that not the children of the flesh, these are children of God, but the children of the promise are being reckoned collectively for a seed. Rotherham here currently reads a seed in his first edition of 1872. All versions which read the seed are inexact and misleading. If the Greek showed the definite article here, it would have meant the whole seed of Abraham. Whereas in English, if we said Abraham's seed, it would generally be understood to mean this seed of Abraham. Now, if Great Britain is actually Israel, it can only be in the sense that the British are physical seed of Jacob, because probably even fewer than 1 in 100 belongs to Abraham's spiritual seed. But you tell me that Britain and the United States and perhaps other peoples are the land of Israel of God, Galatians 6:16. That would entail that these people would require to exhibit the necessary characteristics as enumerated by Liddon on Romans. John 1:47, Nathanael was truly an Israelite in whom there is no guile. Romans 2:29, the religious Israelite or Jew is that inwardly, literally in the hidden. But what does Galatians 6:16 really say? And as many as shall order their steps by this rule, peace be upon them, and mercy, and upon the Israel of God. Note the position of the semicolon. It is important. Arthur S. Way renders the last few words in the paraphrase, I, and upon all the true Israel, the Israel of God. All through the epistle, Paul has strongly in mind his own race, and as he closes the epistle, he is unable to forget his kinsmen who are believing. As Ellicott says, Paul includes all in his blessing of whatever stock and kindred, and then with his thoughts turning, as they ever did, to his own brethren after the flesh, he pauses to specify those who were once Israelites, according to the flesh, but are now the Israel of God, true spiritual children of Abraham. Peace be upon them, and mercy, and upon the Israel of God. The word and in the last clause here means also, not even. The repetition, moreover, of the preposition upon, epi, shows that two classes are mentioned. Gentile believers are not the Israel of God, and the Israel of God are not British Israelites, but individual believers among Israel. For the construction, we might compare 1 Corinthians 9:5. Have we no right at all to be leading about his sister wife, as also the rest of the apostles and the brothers of the Lord and Cephas? The Lord's brothers here are a distinct group from the apostles. We were reading a very interesting book upon British Israel by a very likable Canadian Scot, written after the 1914-1918 World War. So pleased was he that Japan came into the war on the side of the British and their allies that he finishes up with a chapter asking, who are the Japanese? He proves, in fact, that they are largely samurai from Samaria, and therefore are akin to the British, possessing every understanding characteristic possessed by Anglo-Saxons and Americans. His book, strange to say, received the blessing of the recognition of the Covenant Publishing Company, Ltd. of London. Of course, that was a good 20 years before Pearl Harbor, when these Israelite Japanese almost obliterated the fleet of the United States. One wonders now whether any nations on earth can be excluded from some form or other of British Israel, unless the Jews. The tendency seems to be to incorporate as many nations as possible, especially those under British hegemony and those which use English speech. However, we must investigate two large atlases to see whether Japan possesses any places which reveal traces of the names Dan or Brit. We did examine the atlas for Denmark, said to have been called after Dan, but strange to relate, not one other name could be discovered commencing with Dan or Den or D-E-N or Den, D-I-N or Don or Dun. Why? In at least 18 countries, we found traces of Adam's wanderings, towns called after Adam. Adam must even have visited Australia. Paul's name is found in over a dozen widely scattered countries, even in Siberia and Alaska and on the Atlantic Ocean. We marvel at his mighty movements, but Peter outdoes them all. He takes the cake, the bun, and the shortbread, for his name is found in at least 340 places all over the earth. It gives us incessant pain to think that some of our friends have gone in for British Israel teaching. We are unable to find one atom of truth behind it. It is not the subject of divine revelation. Every argument put forward seems to be due entirely to national pride and wishful thinking. Ourselves, we must suffer some loss before the judgment seat of Christ, but any suffering will be made much worse if we observe dear friends suffering because they were gullible enough to swallow the archenemy's specious effort to destroy the identity of the real Israel.